Do you think you are too old to start a business? Think again. There is a pernicious myth out there that you have to be young to found a successful startup or new business. But it is just a myth. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of inventors, helping them get patents on their innovations, and I've also mentored and coached people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I can tell you, almost beyond any doubt, that both innovative ideas and entrepreneurial expertise increase with age. People get better at inventing and starting businesses as they get older. And you don't have to just take my word for it. There is research out there that supports this idea that, contrary to popular belief, older innovators and inventors are more successful or more likely to be successful than younger ones. But let's go back to the myth. Why is it that we think that? There are a lot of images that we have of innovators and entrepreneurs. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Brennan Page. These are all people that were young and they founded companies that we all know that have changed everything about our lives. And there's a story that supports this. It's called Planck's principle. And the idea is that people who are young are simply less beholden to the paradigms that exist for thought and practice in the world. So they are free to explore new ideas and try new things. There's also the idea that people who are young simply have a lot more energy to devote to their efforts, so they're more likely to be successful. And this is a completely plausible theory. Wrong. Or at least it's not the whole story. I certainly can't deny that Gates and Jobs and Bezos and Brennan Page and Zuckerberg were young when they founded their companies. But it's not the whole story. There's more to it. My first piece of evidence for this is a paper by Azoulay et al. And this is not a particularly new paper, but I think it's still very, very relevant to the discussion about how age affects entrepreneurship. And they do in fact conclude that age has a big effect on entrepreneurial success. Their primary finding, however, is that successful entrepreneurs are middle-aged. They are not young. In fact, they find no evidence to suggest that founders in their 20s are especially likely to succeed. So this is compelling, but if you look a little deeper, there's actually more valuable information in that paper for people who are older, who are thinking about starting businesses. For example, this graph. And what this is showing you is the likelihood of success on the horizontal, the vertical axis of a new startup versus the age of the person that founded it. And what they find is that there is a relationship, and that the older you get, from going your 20s up until your 60s, the more likely you are to be successful. And by success, they mean, do you have high employment growth in your company? Did you get a successful exit? Did the company experience a successful IPO, initial public offering? In fact, they conclude that a founder at 50 is almost twice as likely to be successful as a founder at 30. And if you look at this graph some more, there is a slight decline that shows up beyond 60. But really, up until the late 60s, which is the last point they had in their sample, your likelihood of being successful as an entrepreneur is still higher than it is in your 30s. So as far as they could tell, this relationship does not end. The older you get, the better you get. From this, they concluded that younger founders were in fact strongly disadvantaged when it came to their likelihood of success in founding a company. What that says is that founders are also like Charles Flint, who founded IBM, Robert Noyce, who founded Intel, Herbert Boyer, who founded Genentech, Linda Weinman, who founded lynda.com, which you may know better as the foundation of LinkedIn Learning, and Paul Tasner, who founded Pulpworks. Hey, let me break in for a minute. It has not escaped my attention that almost all of these people, with the exception of one, are white dudes. I get it, that's an issue, but getting into it much would take us too far afield. Let me know if you want to hear more about that. I can certainly talk about it. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming. So why should this relationship hold? Why should this be the case? And this is an important thing to look at because the answer gives you a roadmap for how you should prepare yourself if you want to become a successful inventor. And it comes down to the 3 types of capital that are very important for founding any business at any time. The first is human capital. That's the skills and expertise that you and your employees developed and have available to use in your business. Secondly, social capital. Social capital is all the relationships and the networks that you're able to draw on as you're founding your business. And the third is financial capital, of course. It's the money, money, money. We all know about the financial capital. The thing that's interesting about these 3 forms of capital is that they all grow with age and experience, or they can grow if you're intentional about it. Human capital, this is the more obvious one. Your skills get better with age. People in their 20s tend to know a lot about a little, whereas people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s have worked in a variety of different fields. They have been on lots of different projects with lots of different people. They've got a broader range of skills, and they also have a higher level overview of the skills, a better sense of the big picture. They also have non-technical skills. They've managed people. They've worked collaboratively in large groups. They've been a part of large R&D teams. They've worked with the people that are around the research, the accountants, the legal team, the marketing people. They just know a lot more people. And that leads to the second form, social capital. Again, this increases with age. When you're young, you have a small group of friends and colleagues that you know well, but you don't tend to know a lot of people beyond that. In fact, in my experience mentoring younger people, one of the most common questions that they ask is, can you introduce me to more people? Because they are well aware that they need to know more people to be successful, but they simply don't have that yet. People in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are much less likely to ask that question because they already have a broad network of people. They have established relationships of all sorts, from the deepest relationships to those weaker relationships that are also important. A good example of this is someone that I coached who is in their 50s, working in corporate R&D, and someone from in their network who was a serial entrepreneur came to them and said, you would make a good entrepreneur. Maybe it's time for you to step out and try this. And so that person within their own network had both someone who would encourage them to become an entrepreneur, as well as someone with the expertise to mentor them through that process, which is something that younger people usually don't have access to. And of course, financial capital. If you've been conscientious and intentional about it, you almost certainly have more resources in that department than you had when you were younger. And you also have an established track record that allows you to tap different sources of funding for your business. There's also an intangible factor that I have seen over and over in my work. And that is, as people get older, as they get more experienced, they develop better taste. They just have a sense of what's the problem I should be working on now. Because as we all know, there are lots and lots of things to do. You can spend your time pretty much however you want to. There's an infinite number of problems to solve. But as people get older, they know there are some you just don't bother with and some that will have a lot of payoff if you put the effort into them. You can think of it as a feeling or an intuition, but that sense of taste grows with age. The last thing I want to talk about is the question of energy. And here, I have to admit, younger people do have more energy. I myself, I would never be able to say that I have more energy now than I had when I was 20. That's not the case. However, I have yet to meet a person who didn't have the ability to find the energy that they needed for something they wanted to do. If they were excited about a project or an activity, they always find the energy. I'm this way, everyone I know is this way. I virtually never run into someone who's like, I can't do that thing I want to do because I'm just too tired. So if you've got the interest, if you're curious about starting something, if you think now might be the time, don't be dissuaded by this myth that being older means you can't do it. It actually means the opposite. Your age and expertise are the magic ingredients that can make you more successful and definitely make you more likely to be successful. So give it a shot. Oh, hey, you've caught me working on the draft of my next speech. Right here on the old Kindle. It'll be coming soon, but in the meantime, why don't you take a look at one of these? See you later.